Before the Spaniards came to the Philippines, Filipinos lived in villages or barangays ruled by rajas or tatus. Everyone, regardless of status, had access to the land and mutually shared the fruits of their labor. They believed that this land is ours. God gave this land to us.
Good day, ma'am. We are the Group 3 and our presentation is going to focus on agrarian reform policies. Let me start with the background. First is the agrarian reform policies, a complicated and frequently contentious program that usually encounters opposition, particularly from people with vested interests. Over the last 8 or 9 decades, the Philippine government has enacted agricultural reform legislation. Now, the implementation of agrarian reform. It moved at a glacial pace. This occurred for a range of factors including a lack of political will. While thousands of hectares have already been reallocated to small farmers, most recently as a result of President Duterte's vigorous desire to implement the CARP, land redistribution remains extremely low in general. Now, what is CARP? The Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, abbreviated CARP, is a Philippine agrarian reform law that is based on Republic Act No. 6657, often known as the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law. It is the transfer of private and public agricultural lands with the objective of assisting beneficiaries in surviving as small independent farmers, regardless of the tenurial arrangement. Later on, agrarian policy in the Philippines during the Spanish era will be discussed in detail. Consider some of the factors that contributed to the problem and why. To this day, land disputes continue to be a source of contention in the Philippine society. The next reporter will give us the definition of agrarian reform.
Philippines remain as an agricultural country. In so many years, the agrarian system of the Philippines was being controlled by the landlords. The farmers in the Philippines were struggling for their rights to the land and other natural resources. Again, I am Pia Serapion, and today we will talk about the definition of agrarian system. In colonial times, the Americans saw it as the main issue for revolts in the Philippines. Americans have realized the needed reforms having seen the defects in land ownership. One measure introduced by Americans to remedy the defects was by legislation. The Philippine Commonwealth government followed this as policymakers recognized the importance of law in protecting the rights of the farmers, the most recent of which is the 1988 Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, also known as Republic Act No. 6657, which will be tackled later on this video. Now, let us talk about what is agrarian reform. Agrarian reform is essentially the rectification of the whole system of agriculture, a key element of the Philippine economy because agriculture employs about half of the population and the majority of inhabitants live in rural areas. To address or avoid an economic, social, or political crisis, reform is frequently initiated by the government or in reaction to internal and external pressures. To put it simply, agrarian reform corrects the flaws in the agricultural system. Agrarian reform centered on relationship between production and the distribution of the land among farmers. Agrarian reform then entails widespread land redistribution. It attempts to empower poor peasants and change rural society's agrarian and social structures. It enables local farmers to have their own land on which to live on a daily basis. However, other studies have found that agrarian reform has had a considerable influence on farmer beneficiaries. Aside from social justice and peace in the countryside, increased per capita incomes, lower poverty incidence, more investments in physical capital, and enhanced household welfare and productivity were observed. Land redistribution alone wasn't sufficient to lift small farmers out of poverty and secure the CARP's success. Support services for agrarian reforms communities have become critical in improving food security and constructing infrastructures that boost food production, improve community commerce, and increase rural household income. Agrarian reform also focused on political and economic class character of the relations of production and distribution in farming and related enterprises. Although the agrarian reform helped to alleviate unemployment and enhance agricultural production and productivity, it was unable to prevent a major migration of rural population from the mountains and most marginal areas. It also had significant multiplier effects since increasing local demand stimulated a temporary expansion in local manufacturing of consumer goods, which was nonetheless protected from external competition. The government initiated agrarian reform in the Philippines aims to alleviate the centuries-old problem of rural landlessness. Between 1990 and 2000, it resulted in higher real per capita earnings and lower poverty rates. Agrarian reforms, in essence, are actions aimed at altering power dynamics. The rural population should be appeased and absorbed into society by removing huge land property and feudal production practices, which would help to the country's political stability. Agrarian reform includes measures to modernize the agricultural practices and improving the living conditions of the entire agrarian population. Agrarian reform is also concerned with improving agricultural methods in order to improve the overall coverage. Programs aimed at achieving this goal include mechanization or intensification, credit facility development, water resource development, infrastructures works, mark to farm roads, marketing facility improvements, price stabilization or guarantees, and so on. Technical assistance through improved fertilizers and seeds. In short, programs that contribute to improved production but have nothing to do with changing the existing land tenure arrangements. Another description of agrarian reform is it is an integrated set of measures designed to eliminate the obstacles to economic and social development arising out of defects in the agrarian structures. The idea of agrarian reform and its significance in economic growth have been critical issues among third world researchers. Agricultural studies have generally focused on capital accumulation, savings and investment, and increasing productivity through technical innovation to the exclusion of issues relating to the land tenure change. The Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law of 1988, agrarian reform is defined to mean the redistribution of lands regardless of crops or fruit produced to farmers and regular farm workers who are landless, irrespective of tenure arrangement, to include the totality of factors and support services designed to lift the economic status of the beneficiaries and all other arrangements alternative to the physical redistribution of lands, such as production or profit sharing, land administration, and the distribution of shares of stock, which will allow beneficiaries to receive a just share of the fruit of the lands they work. The Agrarian Reform Program is based on the right of landless farmers and ordinary farm workers to own the lands they till directly or collectively, or in other case of the farm workers, to earn a fair share of the fruits of their labor. To that aim, the state shall encourage and carry out just distribution of all agricultural lands pursuant to the priorities and retention limitations established in this Act, taking into account ecological, developmental, and equity factors, and subject to reasonable compensation. The state must respect small landowners' rights and provide incentives for voluntary land sharing.
16th to 19th century land ownership system. The Pueblo agriculture system is a system that allows each family to own 4 to 5 hectares of land for them to cultivate. Law Indies awarded tracts of land to people such as religious orders, just like religious congregations, particularly parish priests, friars, Jesuit priests. They also have given lands to encomenderos. There are people who collect attributes to indies. They are also of duty for the well-being of these people. Apart from that is the repartimiento, or the colonial labor system. The system is when you are in debt, you shall work for that debt by working on a piece of land. Hacienda system in the 19th century is the system wherein if you are in debt, you shall work on a specific land area for you to be able to work for your debt. So that means your labor is equivalent to the amount of debt you have. For example, if you have around let's say 100,000 debt, you shall work for 100, maybe 10 years during work labor. And then in 1860, land registration was established. This is when people who own lands must register their lands. This also resulted to revolutionary acts by the peasants since they were driven out of the places they do not own. Section 15 of the Philippine Bill of 1902 allows acquisition of 16 hectares for an individual and a total of 1,024 hectares for a corporate landowner. Philippine Commission Act number 496 established the torrent system. This is to address the absence of title and accurate land survey. So the torrent system is a system that allows the government to keep track of lands owned by the living and the deceased. The Land Act of 1903 established a homestead program that allows tenants to enter agribusiness. So therefore, if you have a piece of land, you can have it for lease or for rent, for you to be able to gain money as at the same time enter agribusiness, wherein you can grow crops for you to be able to sell it. SAKDAL uprising on May 2 to 3, 1935 was an uprising started by the people for a demand on tax abolition, equal ownership of land, and a direct severance of the ties with the USA. This was when President Quezon established or created the National Rice and Corn Corporation. Although this was a great move of his, eventually the program or his propaganda was slowly fading since there was a lack of budget, and then there was also an uprising with peasants.
Hi, mabuhay! I am Norafia Salikpiang and I am going to report the agrarian reform after World War II. This was called the Philippine Republic or the New Republic. After the establishment of the Philippine independence in 1946, the problems of land tenure remained. This became worse in certain areas. Thus, the Congress of the Philippines revised the tenancy law. President Rojas signed into law Republic Act 34, established 70 to 30 sharing arrangements, regulating shared tenancy contracts. Land Settlement and Development Corporation or LASIDECO under President Quirino was transformed into National Resettlement and Rehabilitation Administration or NARA during President MAGSAYSAY to accelerate the resettlement program. Executive Order Number 355 issued on October 23, 1950 by Elpidio Quirino replaced the National Land Settlement Administration with Land Settlement Development Corporation or LASIDECO, which takes over the responsibilities of the Agricultural Machinery Equipment Corporation and the Rice and Corn Production Administration. President MAGSAYSAY'S RA 1199 Agricultural Tenancy Act protects tenure rights and informed tenancy practices. It governed the relationship between landowners and tenant farmers by organizing shared tenancy and leasehold system. The law provided the security of tenure of tenants. It also created the Court of Agrarian Relations. This law was created in 1955 to improve tenancy security, fix land rentals, resolve land disputes filed by the peasant organizations. Republic Act No. 821, or the creation of Agricultural Credit Cooperative Financing Administration, provided small farmers and shared tenant loans with low interest rates of 6 to 8%. Agricultural Credit and Coop Financing Admin, or ACCFA, to provide warehouse facilities and assist in marketing products, spearhead establishment of agricultural and industrial bank to assist in applying for homestead. NARA convenes Hooks Rebels or Hook Balahap Rebellion, or also called Hook Rebellion, in 1946 to 1954. It is a communist-led peasant uprising in Central Luzon, Philippines. To resettle in areas to restart peaceful lives failed due to lack of funds, inadequate support system, which landed elite did not fully cooperate. The Agrarian Reform during the term of President DIOSDADO MACAPAGAL. Republic Act No. 3844, or Agricultural Land Reform Code, during President Macapagal's terms, abolished shared tenancy, prescribe a program to convert tenant farmers to lease and later owner cultivators, aimed to free tenants from tenancy, and emphasize owner cultivatorship and farmer independence, equity, productivity improvement, and public land distribution. This act was an advancement of land reform in the Philippines that was enacted in 1963. It abolished tenancy and established a leasehold system in which farmers paid fixed rentals to landlords rather than a percentage of harvest. In agricultural leasehold, the farmer cultivates the land belonging to or possessed by another with the latter's consent for a price certain in money or in produce or both. It also established the Land Bank of the Philippines to help with the land reform, particularly the purchase of agricultural estates for division and resale to small landholders and the purchase of land by agricultural lease. While the law was a significant advance over previous legislation, the bill was weakened by numerous amendments imposed by Congress, which was dominated by landlords. It was also weakened by the failure of Congress to allocate necessary funds for effective implementation of the law. The act has been further amended several times subsequent to becoming law by later legislation. The Republic Act was hailed as one that would emancipate Filipino farmers from the bondage of tenancy.
Hello everyone. Today, let's discuss about the President Marcos Agrarian Reform. 5 days after the promulgation of martial law, President Marcos declared the Presidential Decree No. 27, Code of Agrarian Reform of the Philippines. This shall apply to tenant farmers of private agricultural lands primarily devoted to rice and corns under a system of sharecrop or lease tenancy, whether classified of landed estate or not. What is landed estate? According to research, landed estate is a property that generates income for the owner without the owner having to do the actual work of the estate. The tenant farmer, whether in land classified as landed estate or not, shall be deemed owner of a portion constituting of family-sized farm of 5 hectares if not irrigated, and 3 hectares if irrigated. In all cases, the landowner may retain an area of not more than 7 hectares if such landowner is cultivating such area or will now cultivate it. For the purpose of determining the cost of the land to be transferred to the tenant farmer pursuant to this decree, the value of the land shall be equivalent to 2.5 times the average harvest of 3 normal crop years immediately preceding the promulgation of this decree. The total cost of the land, including interest at the rate of 6% per annum, shall be paid by the tenant in 15 years of 15 equal annual amortizations. In case of default, the amortization due shall be paid by the farmers' cooperative in which the defaulting tenant farmer is a member, with the cooperative having a right of recourse against him. The government shall guarantee such amortization with shares of stock in government-owned and government-controlled corporations. No title to the land owned by the tenant farmers under this decree shall be actually issued to a tenant farmer unless and until the tenant farmer has become a full-fledged member of a duly recognized farmers cooperative. Title to land acquired pursuant to this decree or the land reform program of the government shall not be transferable except by hereditary succession or to the government in accordance with the provision of this decree, the Code of Agrarian Reforms, and the other existing laws and regulations. The Department of Agrarian Reform, through its Secretary, is hereby empowered to promulgate rules and regulations for the implementation of this decree. All laws, executive orders, decrees, and rules and regulations, or parts thereof, inconsistent with this decree, are hereby repealed and or modified accordingly. Now, let's proceed to President Corazon Aquino Agrarian Reform. The 1987 Constitution, ratified by the Filipino people during the administration of President Corazon C. Aquino, provides under Section 21 under Article 2 that the state shall promote comprehensive rural development and agrarian reform. President Corazon C. Aquino enacted the following laws. Republic Act No. 6657 on June 10, 1988, an act which became effective on June 15, 1988, and instituted a comprehensive agrarian reform program to promote social justice and industrialization. It means that to have a more equitable distribution and ownership of land, with due regard to the rights of landowners to just compensation and to the illogical needs of the nation, shall be undertaken to provide farmers and farm workers with the opportunity to enhance their dignity and improve the quality of their lives through greater productivity of agricultural lands. Next is the Executive Order Number 228. On July 16, 1987, it was declared full ownership to qualified farmer beneficiaries covered by Presidential Decree Number 27. It also determined the value of remaining unvalued rice and corn lands subject of Presidential Decree Number 27 and provided for the manner of payment by the FPs and mode of compensation to landowners. Next is the Proclamation Number 131 on July 1987. It was instituted the CARP as a major program of the government. It provided for a special fund known as the Agrarian Reform Fund with an initial amount of 50 billion pesos to cover the estimated cost of the program from 1987 to 1992, which shall be sourced from the receipts of the sale of the assets of the Asset Privatization Trust and receipts of the sale of ill-gotten wealth received through the Presidential Commission on Good Government and such other sources as government may deem appropriate. The amounts collected and accruing to the special fund shall be considered automatically appropriated for the purpose authorized in this proclamation. Republic Act No. 405 on June 14, 1990, vested in the Land Bank of the Philippines the responsibility to determine land valuation and compensation for all lands covered by CARP. After effecting the transfer of titles from the landowner to the Republic of the Philippines, the Land Bank of the Philippines shall inform the Department of Agrarian Reform of such fact in order that the latter may proceed with the distribution of the lands to the qualified agrarian reform beneficiaries within the time specified by law.
Hi, I'm Jenaline Cumidoy, and today I will be reporting about Fidel V. Ramos and Joseph Estrada. Fidel Ramos, or Fidel Valdez Ramos, popularly known as FVR and Eddie, is a retired Filipino general and politician who served as the 12th President of the Philippines from 1992 to 1998. He is remembered for steadfast promoting the principles of the people, empowerment, and global competitiveness. In 1993, he put an end to the power of crisis that crippled Filipino homes and industries for 2 years. Under this leadership, the Philippines experienced a period of political stability and rapid economy recovered dramatically growth, and expansion. Prior to this election as president, Fidel Ramos served as Secretary of National Defense in 1988 to 1991 and Chief of the Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines in 1986 and 1988 with the rank of General. President Fidel Ramos' policies and programs to foster national reconciliation and unity led to major peace agreements with Muslims, separatists, communists, insurgents, and military rebels, which renewed investor confidence in the Philippine economy. Ramos pushed for the deregulation of the key industries and the liberation of the economy. He encountered the privatization of public entities to include the modernization of public infrastructure through the expanded Build, Operate, Transfer or BOT law. During the years 1993 to 1997, the Philippine economy recovered dramatically. Gross national product averaged 5% annually. The total inflow of the foreign exchange into the country outpaced that of the combined periods of rule of both President Marcos and Aquino, and the average income of the Filipino family grew more during Ramos' administration than in the preceding 2 decades. This allowed Fidel Ramos' government to implement a comprehensive social reform agenda or SRA that address long-standing problems regarding poverty, health, education and skills, training, housing, environmental protection, children and the youth, the elderly and the handicapped, jobs and livelihood, agrarian reform, and access to equal opportunity. The peace agreement, which Ramos broke with military rebels and the MNLF, Southern secessionists, mourned for him together with Chairman Norm Miswari and the Philippines. The coveted 1997 UNESCO Peace Prize of the First for Asian. His public service spanned a total period of 51 years. Activity after public politics. Ramos founded the Ramos Peace and Development Foundation and non-partisan and non-profit organization dedicated to the promotion of peace and development in the Philippines and in the larger Asia-Pacific region. In 1998, together with Bob Hawke, a former Prime Minister of Australia, and Morihiro Hosokawa, former Prime Minister of Japan, Ramos founded the Buao Forum from Asia, or BFA, a primary forum for leaders in government, business, and academia in Asia and other continents who are committed to promoting regional economic integration and bring Asian countries even closer to their development goals. Fidel Valdez Ramos was a founding member of the Global Leadership Foundation in 2004. Joseph Estrada, original name Joseph Ejercito, born April 19, 1937 in Manila, Philippines. Filipino actor and politician who served as the President of the Philippines in 1998 to 2001 and later Mayor of Manila in 2013 to 2019. Former Senator and President Estrada was born on April 19, 1937 in Tondo, Maynila, to Emilio Ejercito and Maria Marcelo. He studied at the Ateneo de Manila University and the Mapua Institute of Technology. He holds Doctor of Humanities from the University of Pangasinan. He became a movie actor in his early 20s and established himself as a living legend in local filmdom. In 1998, Estrada ran for president through his candidacy faced significant opposition. Ramos, who was constitutionally barred from running for a second term, endorsed House Speaker Jose de Venecia, and many of the country's powerful businessmen opposed Estrada's populist proposals. The Roman Catholic Church denied Estrada his support because he had admitted to having fathered 4 children by women other than his wife. However, he did have the support of Imelda Marcos, the widow of the former President Ferdinand Marcos, and then a member of Congress, and he enjoyed a devoted following among the country's poor. Estrada managed to capture nearly 40% of the vote, handily defeating his nearest rival, De Venecia, who gathered only 15.9%. The margin of victory was the largest in the free election in the history of the Philippines, and Estrada was officially declared president by Congress on May 29, 1998. Estrada's tenure as president was short-lived, however, as a corruption scandal erupted in October 2000 when a fellow politician claimed that Estrada had accepted millions of dollars worth of bribes. In November, the Philippine Senate began an impeachment trial, but it was abandoned after some senators blocked the admission of evidence. On January 20, 2001, Estrada was out amidst mass protests, and his vice president, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, ascended to the presidency. Later that year, Estrada was brought to trial on charges of plunder, large-scale corruption, and accused of having procured more than $80 million through bribes and corrupt dealings. Estrada denied the accusations, calling them politically motivated, and he remained relatively popular in the Philippines despite the charges. In September 2007, he was convicted of plundering and sentenced to a maximum of 40 years in prison. The following month, however, Estrada was pardoned by Arroyo. In October 2009, he announced his candidacy for president, but he was defeated in the May 2010 elections by Benigno S. Aquino III, the son of Benigno Aquino Jr. and Corazon Aquino. In 2013, Estrada ran for the mayor of Manila and defeated the incumbent Alfredo Lim. After taking office later that year, he faced a number of issues, notably the city's debt and inability to pay for basic services. In order to raise revenue, he sharply raised property taxes. Estrada faced a serious challenge from Lim in the 2016 race, but narrowly won re-election. He ran for a third term in 2019 but was defeated. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I will be reporting about the agrarian reform of President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo and President Benigno Aquino III. Philippine President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo launched the Rural Development Program or RDP in 1992 with the aim of making the countryside economically viable for the Filipino family. The program aims to promote social equity and new economic opportunities toward lasting peace and sustainable rural development. The Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, or DAR, will remain vigorous in implementing land acquisitions and distribution component of CARP. The DAR will improve land tenure system through land distribution and leasehold. These include credit assistance, extension services, irrigation facilities, roads and bridges, marketing facilities, and training and technical support programs. The ARCs are rural economic zones that will help in the creation of job opportunities in the countryside. Kalahi R Zone. The Kalahi Agrarian Reform or CAR were also launched. These zones consist of one or more municipalities with a concentration of ARC population to achieve greater agro-productivity. More paralegal officers to support undermanned adjudicatory boards and introduce quota system to compel to work faster on agrarian reform cases. DAR will respect the rights of both farmers and landowners and will be fair and balanced on its decisions. President Benigno Aquino III has signed into law the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or CARP, the centerpiece program of his mother's administration. Apart from the said farm lots, he also promised to complete the distribution of privately owned lands of productive agricultural estates. Agrarian Reform Community Connectivity and Economic Support Services or ARCCESS was set up by former President Bhubaneswar Singh Bhumibol Adobapnaram Harahim's administrations. Agrarian Production Credit Program or APCP provided credit support for crop production to newly organized and existing agrarian reform beneficiaries organizations or ARBOs. These are not qualified to avail of loans under the regular credit window of banks. Among them, it is the launch of a web-based legal system of recording and monitoring various kinds of cases, including those relating to land acquisitions and development. The Executive Order Number 26 Series of 2011 mandates the creation of a national greening program in cooperation with the government agencies.
Under the presidency of Rodrigo Roa Duterte, he pursued an aggressive land reform program that would help alleviate the life of poor Filipino farmers by prioritizing the provision of support services alongside land distribution. The President directed the Department of Agrarian Reform to launch the second piece of agrarian reform where landless farmers would be awarded with undistributed lands under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or CARP. A total of 516,000 hectares have been distributed among 405,800 farmers nationwide. Last December 29, 2018, in Kidapawan City, the President distributed to the farmers the certificates of land ownership award as well as in General Santos City last June 13, 2019. The President also placed 400 hectares of agricultural lands in the tourist spot in Boracay under Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. Under his administration, the Department of Agrarian Reform created an anti-corruption task force to investigate and handle reports on alleged anomalous activities by officials and employees of the department. Duterte administration has imposed a tall order on the Department of Agrarian Reform to finish all land acquisition and distribution or LAD under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program by this year before the term of President Duterte ends. To accomplish this, the Department of Agrarian Reform has created a program dubbed LAD Free 2022, which will see the creation of a well-coordinated strategy to distribute government-owned lands, distribute collective certificate of land ownership award, and achieve a zero backlog in the resolution of cases related to agrarian justice. The agency said it was also working hard to implement Executive Order 75, which orders the acquisition of all land government-owned land devoted to or suitable for agriculture but are no longer actually directly and exclusively used for the purpose for which it has been reserved.
What is CARP, or Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program? It is a centerpiece program of President CORAZON C. Aquino, which stands until today. Simply means the redistribution of public and private agricultural lands to farmers, farm workers who are landless regardless of tenurial arrangement. It was put into law on June 10, 1988 through Republic Act 6657. This law aims to promote social justice and industrialization. The government sees that such law will promote higher incomes and increase the chance of farmers beneficiary to be non-poor. The 1988 Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law, or CARP, broadened the scope of rural and land reform by including private agricultural lands. This also provides for support services to agrarian reform beneficiaries like infrastructure, capability building, and credit or marketing assistance. Land were distributed within 10 years, but when this wasn't achieved, the law extended for another 10 years during President Ramos' administration and was extended again for 5 years under Comprehensive Agrarian Reform with Extended Reforms CARP law. Alienable or disposable lands, agricultural lands, and reclassified lands and privately owned lands are subject to purchase, which vest ownership, or lease, which vest only the right to occupy and use for the period agreed upon. Under the law, therefore, landowners were paid by the government through just compensation and allowed to retain not more than 5 hectares of land plus 3 hectares of each child of the landowner, provided the child is at least 15 years old and is actually tilling the land or directly managing it, and 3 hectares for the reform beneficiaries. Farmer beneficiaries are granted under the CARP and CARPER. First, absolute ownership in the form of emancipation patents upon full payment of amortization. Second, absolute ownership in the form of certificates of land transfer or certificate of ownership for those still completing payments. However, CARPs prohibit sales of transfer of lands by reforms beneficiaries for a period of 10 years except through hereditary succession or except for sale to the government, to the Land Bank of the Philippines, and to the qualified reforms beneficiaries.